Good afternoon, Luang Por.
Good afternoon, Ajahn Sumedho.
Thank you for taking the time to do another Q&A. So today is Sunday, 26th of January. I was wondering if you would offer some reflection around this tool you've used of thinking intentionally in order to notice the space between the thoughts, and then how you use that tool you develop to have perspective on thinking, on doubt, and on how thinking creates the personality.
Well, it's when you're really observing the thinking mind and the memories you have of your life, then you tend to identify with them as a person. You see yourself as a separate form on the planet Earth, and your life is, you remember what you remember of your life. When I was 5 years old, when I was 10, and on like that. So the thinking process is all about time and age and form, and that's how it's developed. But when you try to really find yourself amongst all the memories, emotions you might experience, good or bad, high or low, you can't find anything permanent. They kind of like phantoms and ghosts or shadows that arise and cease. And when people want to know who they are, what their purpose of life is, and amongst all the moving, changing memories and habits of thought and emotion, really ask yourself, can you find a permanent sense of self in any of it? And because of that, we try to identify with things like religion, all the gender identities. We want to fix ourselves as a certain type of gender, as a Republican or Democrat, as a feminist, as a MAGA, as a communist. They're all ways of finding a word that we cling to and identify with, as if we were really a communist all the time, or a trans person all the time, or a homosexual all the time. So when you see these identities, you realize they're what you identify with as a separate individual person. Gives you a position in life. Right wing, left wing, Tory, Labour. Here in England, are we Europeans or British or English? Some people have very strong identities with being English. And I've asked some people about whether when we were in the European Union, whether they saw themselves as Europeans, and many said, no, we're not European. We're English. So I think that's an identity you prefer to hold to. But when you examine it when you let go of these identities, what's left? If you're not English, not European, not gay, not trans, not Tory, not Labour, not male or not female or not human, then what's left is conscious awareness. And it's not a condition, it has no form or nothing to grasp. So it's the result is a total relinquishing or abandoning or letting go of phenomena, of conditions. So that's liberation, that's enlightenment. When you realize you're nothing, but when one says, I'm really nothing, it can be another ego position, because nothing is still another word that is part of the English language. And you can say, I'm no thing, or I'm nothing, or I'm everything, I'm God, or I'm not God, or whatever words you use, they are limitations that we realize if we grasp them, then we suffer. So it's this investigation into the factor of life like Dhamma QA, looking into the way it is. Or, on a conventional level, I'm Ajahn Sumedho, that's fair enough. Operate on convention, but it's not liberating to be conventional, because you get very attached to being Ajahn Sumedho or a Buddhist or a monk, and then you suffer from it. Because, it's another sankhara, a phenomenon that comes and goes. Am I Ajahn Sumedho when I'm asleep? Am I Ajahn Sumedho when I'm bathing, when I'm shaving? And on a conventional level, they say, well, Ajahn Sumedho is sleeping right now, that's convention. But the body is sleeping, and there's no Ajahn Sumedho except on the conventional level. So I remember Luang Por Sumedho giving a lot of reflections on conventional reality, like Theravada Buddhism, Thai forest tradition. This is an ancient religion, 2,565 years old. These are conventions. Just as Tibetan Buddhism is a convention, or Mahayana Buddhism, Christianity, Judaism, they're conventional realities that when we grasp them, then we lose our ability to be mindful. We become a separate person. If I am a Theravada Buddhist and I grasp it, then I can feel aversion to other religions because they're not the same. And, we can think of Theravada as the original Buddhist tradition, and it's pure what the Buddha taught directly, and we can pride ourselves on being Theravada and not Mahayana. And what is that? In terms of grasping these words, these conventions. So the conventions aren't, not bad or anything, but it's the grasping, the clinging, the ignorance in identifying with something very impermanent, unstable, and unreal in itself.
So how does the exercise of thinking intentionally, noticing the gaps, help?
Well, that's because we are human beings, are thinking creatures. We're mammals. And we might be evolved from apes. If you're an evolutionist. And then for some forms of Christianity, we're special creation by God. And we're taught that usually when we're a child. You're God's creation, you're not evolved from apes into human beings, but God created the human race, they're special. So we've got this idea, I'm special. So when we look at when you think to yourself, I'm a special creation by God, then you can say, oh, that's rubbish, you can dismiss it. I don't believe that. Or, I am, that's my nature. I'm not just an ape, I'm an advanced form of an ape. And because we think we're so better than apes. But even thinking that I'm more highly evolved than a gorilla, or a chimpanzee, or an orangutan, that's just thinking again. So important, why my practice is to pay attention to the space between the words, because the words, they're given to us. We learn a language. We weren't born speaking any language. So we acquire the language of our mother, father, our peers, our country we're born into. We learn to speak that language. But the space between the words, we don't notice. We don't tend to notice it. We find it silent, and if we just get lost for words, we feel very uncomfortable. You've been in situations, in a social situation where you feel lost for words, you can't find the proper word, and you search desperately for a word to describe something, because that feeling of not knowing, of silence, is we don't like that, because we're conditioned to fill all the space with things. So when we're identifying with our thoughts, whether they're good or bad, we operate from going from one thought to the next without noticing that one thought arises as a beginning and an ending. And that's common to all thoughts, no matter how ethereal or supreme the thought might be, or how vulgar or corrupt the thought might be. The thought has a beginning and an end, and it's very important to notice the ending of a thought, because we don't pay attention. We might find the beginning of a thinking, all right, we can go along, but if we don't notice the ending because the mind immediately goes on to the next word, like in grammar. So you think of I and am, and you don't notice, the word I is very personal. It's me, Ajahn Sumedho. I am, and then that can be just a impersonal statement because it's just an announcing presence. It's not Ajahn Sumedho yet. So I am is oftentimes a mantra in Advaita Vedanta practices. Because it's impersonal. But then when I say I am Ajahn Sumedho, then that's personal because you, Ajahn Sumedho, can say I am, but when you say I am Sumedho, then that's personal because I can't really say I'm Ajahn Sumedho. It's not part of my conventional reality, unless I'm joking. And so you just by investigating these assumptions we make. Like I am is an announcement of existence. And but it arises, it's a time-bound condition, it depends on the language. Your native tongue, you have different words for I and am, but it's a state of being, present, announcing presence. Then I'm a Buddhist monk, then it becomes, defined as I'm not a Christian monk. I am 90 years old and you can't say that. Not yet, anyway. The people would just laugh at you. And I don't think you could say that with a straight face. And then, but I can say that because on the conventional level, that's the way it is. But am I really 90 years old? Is the space between the word, does it have any age? The space between I and am and Sumedho, is space, is it a gender? Is there a female space or a male space? We can say there is, or believe there is, but when you really observe, it's just space, it's just empty. And it's the end of a word. And to just inform yourself of the way it is. That's the way it is. It's not just my kind of meditation technique or my discovery, but it's like investigating experience as we are experiencing life through the body and the senses. So space is, perceivable. Like I can see the space in this room. I can see that you're sitting across from me in a space. Well, that's oftentimes just taken for granted. We just say that the room it's not really a very big space. Or we go into the new Sala and Amaravati say that's really big space. So we give space sizes according to conventions. And that's just thinking, because space has no limit. What we're saying is that this room is not a big room, and the sala is very big. So the sala meeting hall in the sala is a really big space. That's convention. But the space really is not about, it's not about the space, it's about the size of the room. So, and that's the way of just the most obvious sense of reason and logic, to investigate. When space, where does it end? Can you see on a bright day an ending to space? And it's the planets in space, the sun, moon, and stars are in space. It's vast. It has no form. It's not European nor English. It's just, but you can actually perceive it in just a simple experience of sitting here with you, the space between us is a space. And so, and just reflecting on space. Space is it good or bad? And we can say, I'm in a bad space or a bad mood. Or this is my space. We get attached to our particular seat in the temple. And some other monk is sitting in my space. And what is that? That to me is claiming that that particular spot, that space is mine, but it's not. It's just space. We're talking about the seat, not the space. So by comparing conventional reality with ultimate reality, space has no limits. It has no beginning or end. Where is the beginning and end of the universe? Are the other galaxies and suns in way out of space, outside the space that we believe we're in? We can imagine all kinds of space, galaxies going on ad infinitum through words, through thoughts. But whatever it is, we're investigating the space that we can perceive right now. It's like this. And the space between the words, the thoughts that we think, is like this. It has no form, no color, no quality, except silence. And the silence, we think of the conventional word silence. We think when life gets very complicated or frustrated and you just want to be silent. Silence is desirable when you're caught in the whirlwind of social media and conversations and thoughts and ideas. I want to be silent. But on meditation retreats, how long does it take to be silent? People come from busy lives in the first few days on a retreat. They have to sit still and not speak. And their mind, it takes almost 3 days for the mind to settle down and not just be caught up in the whirlwind, the tsunami of one's thoughts or concerns or worries or personal problems. But in noticing the space between words, it's, it's like, it's so simple. It's not like something difficult. But you're putting yourself in the position of the watcher, not the critic, because silence is good or bad, or, it's not about, it has a quality. Silence is silent. It's not good or bad, right or wrong. But it's here and now. When you awaken to it, when you notice the space between the words you're thinking, and deliberately thinking, because just habitual thinking, we don't have the time or the patience to notice space. We've got important messages, questions to ask, things to write down, and definitions, on and on we want, because we're very attached to thinking. But as you begin to, the space is impersonal too. When I think I am, and the silence of space, and you're thinking, I am, it's the same thing. The silence, the space is not personal. It's no longer Sumedho or Asoko. It's like this. But then as soon as I am Asoko, then it goes into a whole history of memories of the past and how you see yourself in the future, and all the whole conditioning of the personality, the ego. And if I identify with silence, rather than with I'm Ajahn Sumedho, then there's nothing more to say.
It's cultivating a perspective, a point of perspective on thoughts, isn't it? Learning to recognize the silence.
Well, silence is here and now, it's timeless. Where anything you think is time-bound, it's in space. It's in the silence, but the silence doesn't come and go, it's just not noticed. We don't pay attention to it, because we fill it with words, concepts, prejudices, biases, and views and opinions. And right now, just the political scene, on the media, the mass media is all about immigrants and woke and words like this. Like 70 years ago, I don't remember thinking about that immigrants were a problem, or that woke was just an English word, a tense of awaken, or the word gay. back in the 1950s, that just meant happy, carefree. And now, if you say gay, everybody assumes you're homosexual. It's just conditioning, isn't it? 50, 70 years ago, I couldn't say I was 90. And that's a convention, because the consciousness has no age. It's apparent here and now and timeless. It's not about time, about memories. So silence is not a memory. The word is a memory, but the reality of silence is always here and now. And as you begin to really notice and accept the space between the words, make a point of it, like by deliberate thinking. Not by trying to be silent as a person, but just by the silence is here and now and has no quality other than silent, but it's always here and now. So sometimes when one can't fall asleep, because there's strong desire when you go to bed to fall asleep, there's still a silence. But the habit of wanting to sleep, one can feel very negative. I didn't have much sleep last night. I was awake all night. That's convention. But in terms of and that's how we tend to react until we realize that silence is not about being asleep or awake, but even in a deep sleep is silent, and no memories arise in deep sleep. But and does consciousness disappear? Does consciousness cease when you're in deep sleep? So we tend to think, because we can't remember deep sleep, we tend to think, well, I wasn't conscious. But consciousness was here and now, even in sleep, in deep sleep. Losing your memory, there's still consciousness. So when we talk about consciousness and Dhamma, apparent here and now, these are just words, like Pali words, like Dhamma is a Pali word, so it's a word we acquire, but what is it really in terms of here and now? Because we chant apparent here and now, and when we begin to just observe, be the watcher rather than the one meditating, or the person trying to get samadhi, or the person trying to conquer bad thoughts, or solve problems, or stop worrying, or trying to become enlightened. When we stop operating always from I am a person, I'm an ignorant, unenlightened person that needs, and I hope to get enlightened because I don't want to be reborn again. How many times have you heard that? Because I know, we find having a body in the society is going to be quite stressful, and we don't want to repeat it. So as a person, I think I don't want to be reborn again to go through childhood and schooling and all that stuff that's part of one's life. I don't want to do that again. Or then we might believe maybe I'll be reborn in a nice heavenly realm. I'll be an angel or a devata. And that's like the devas, they live for eons, 84 million eons. What is an eon? It's a long time. So being 84 eons of being a beautiful deva sounds rather attractive. But then the opposite, if I've been bad, a naughty boy, then I get sent down to eons in hell, which one nobody wants, because that's eons of pain and misery. But this is all thinking, that we tend to believe or disbelieve. There are no angels, there's no hell, such thing as hell, and there's no such thing as heaven, there's no God. These are still thinking, Sankara's words that affirm or deny. But what is the reality that's apparent here and now? And the space between the words, between the thoughts. We don't create it. It's here and now. And we can be and consciousness has no form, so there's nothing to see or know. But consciousness can know itself. When you stop grasping at conditions or phenomena.
Thank you very much, Luang Por.